Hi, girls. It's me. It's Friday, and time for our little tidbit on Sermon on the Mount, and it is over Matthew 5:21 through 28, and we are talking about going back through the commandment of thou shalt not murder. And Jesus is expanding on that to talk about that it really is more of a heart issue than it is an actual physical act, which at that point, the scribes and the Pharisees were really about looking righteous and being righteous. And it was all about what you do. It wasn't about the condition of your heart. And so for them, as long as they did not physically commit the act of murder, they could be considered righteous. And Jesus is saying, no, no, no. God's looking at your heart to see if you have hate or murderous thoughts, intent in your heart. So, a couple of things that I thought were cool when I was going through the commentaries this week were, on the Jesus says, you have heard that it was said. And one thing I read is that at that time, the disciples and probably a lot of the common folk couldn't read Hebrew. They at that time were speaking Aramaic and Greek, and Hebrew from the Old Testament was really something very special that the scribes and the Pharisees could read. And so they would read the old scrolls in the Old Testament, like the Ten Commandments, to the people to teach them those things. And so I thought that was a neat tidbit. But the next 5 weeks, the next 5 things that we're going to be talking about are really all commandments that Jesus is reinterpreting. And almost always he's talking about the condition of our heart and how important the condition of our heart is, more than just the things that we do, right? Because we can go out and look like we are going to church on Sundays. We can look the part that we are, not sinning and doing all the right things, while we have just a heart full of hate or bitterness or lust or whatever. And so that was what Jesus was teaching about God's laws. And the other thing that I did want to say is that this can be taken as, it says, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shalt not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. And that word Raka is just like calling someone an idiot or a fool. And so really huge step, right? From talking about people cannot go out and commit murder and physically kill someone to you shouldn't have anger and hate in your heart and call someone an idiot, right? Huge, huge difference between the two. But that's the point, is that God is after our heart and the condition of our heart, as well as how we treat and view and look at other people. So I love that about this. I definitely, of course, I think there's justified anger. I always equate it to if someone were coming after your spouse or your kids, or had hurt them in some way, then of course you're going to be angry. We get angry about things that when we want justice for something, right? When we think somebody has been wronged or hurt in a way that is unfair. So obviously God gave us all of our emotions. Anger is one of those. It can protect us in sometimes, and it can be a good thing sometimes. But the way that Jesus was talking about this kind of anger was really anger that is misplaced, right? Somebody makes a horrible mistake, somebody forgot something, and rather than being compassionate and understanding, you jerk or you idiot. And some of us may do that when we're driving, so this hopefully will remind you to not do that or curse the person in front of you. I'm not saying that I have not been guilty of such sin, but just saying we should always be considering what's in our heart towards everybody. And then the last part of the verse, or this part of scripture, really talks about how if you are giving an offering to the Lord, if you are worshiping the Lord and you remember that you have this grievance with someone, or you need to reconcile a relationship that's important in your life because it's in a bad place, then what he's saying is God would like for you to go make that reconciliation a priority rather than just continue to go through the motions of religion, right? And to settle the matter quickly. And the other thing that was interesting to me is he was talking about how Jesus said to remember the offense, to stop the sacrifice and go back and make things right with your brother. Well, if you think about those times when Jesus was saying this, there were times people had to come and walk, 4 or 5 days just to come to the place to make a sacrifice, to atone for sin. And so to ask them to get all the way there, to go through the cleaning rituals and do everything that they needed to do to actually make the sacrifice. And then if they remembered that they were in a fight with someone or they had wronged someone because of their anger, then it's saying, stop. Don't make the sacrifice. I want you to turn around. I want you to go walk back 5 days, and I want you to reconcile that relationship before you come back and make the sacrifice. And again, sacrificing an atonement through sacrificing animals and the blood and all of that, that was so real and important for them, right? For us, it's not, we don't even really, I don't think that much about it because we've been so blessed and given the relationship that we have with Jesus and our salvation. And so we don't have to go make those sacrifices or do all the cleansing rituals and all of that. I can't even imagine how hard that was. But so that is our talk today, our tidbit today. 7 minutes. We're doing great. So next week, we're going to talk about adultery. So Matthew 5, if you want to read that part of the Sermon on the Mount. Each tidbit, again, is just short. We're just doing this every week, just kind of refresh our memory to talk about what the things that Jesus has taught and the way that he taught us to live in God's way, God's world, God's way. That's my new, I love that. Again, I'm stealing it from my pastor, but that's it. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you have a great weekend, or I hope you've had a great week. Hope you have a good weekend, and I will see you next week.